So I finished Jade City, the first in the Greenbone saga by Fonda. This book is praised the world over on Book Talk, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. Uh, don't look at me like that. No, no, put that down. I said I liked it. I said I liked it. I'm just also going to say I think it's a bit overhyped on the internet. Just a bit. Just a bit.
Why are you so negative all the time? Uh,
I think it's perfectly solid. It does everything quite well. It's probably a very good gateway novel into the genre, which explains why lots of people have picked it up and it's become so popular. It didn't blow me away. Like, there was nothing that was done, for me at least, exceptionally well or particularly memorable, especially when I compare it to so many other books in the genre. Like, fantasy is so oversaturated. And again, I don't dislike it. I just think to see some creators tote it as like one of the best fantasy books ever written, I'm like, it's alright. Perhaps this is one of those series where the subsequent books are so much better, and I will look back on this one more favourably in hindsight after reading books 2 and 3. Maybe, but I didn't leave this one going like, wow, that's a fantasy book for the ages, is my point. It's some combination of Green Lantern and Goodfellas. Like, the magic system is probably its strongest asset. The whole monkey's paw of the Jade, how it gives them these incredible abilities, this like sensory awareness, but then it also like affects their mental sanity, and there's all of these problems with like getting addicted to your Jade. I thought that was all done really well, actually. But then beyond that, the actual mobster quality could have leaned in. Like, the thing with Goodfellas and like those other mobster type films that make them so infectious is that they draw you in and make you feel that sort of familial togetherness, that you can sort of see why all of that illegal activity is justifiable. Like, they're living above the law because they have so much to protect. This, I never really felt the family vibes. Like, their family felt a bit disconnected, and sure, that was because people had died and stuff had happened, but I wish there had been more tender moments where we got to see just how like pure of heart and like loving the cool dynasty was, because it felt a bit stilted for me. This whole book more or less reminded me of like the first Game of Thrones book, in the sense that it's the whole story is the breakdown in relations between two rival families, and the catalyst for that is the untimely death of one of the main characters. In that sense, this is exactly the first Game of Thrones book. It's A Song of Ice and Fire. But when you make that comparison, this, of course, is the losing book, which is a shame because it's not a fair comparison. Like, who else is George R. R. Martin? Like, come on. But the dialogue, the characters, there just wasn't anyone for me to hold on to. Like, I did like them all, but there's no one that I was like, oh, I'm really excited for their chapters. You know what I mean? I think this story would have really benefited from having a focal point. Like, who's the main character in all of this? There isn't one. It's alternating POVs, which I do like, but it was a bit too disparate. I needed someone who I could really be like, okay, it's me and you until the end. My favourite POV was Shay. I thought she was the most interesting character, but there wasn't quite enough of her for me to really latch on to her as the one that I was like, okay, you're my ride or die. And it was the same with like Andon as well. Like, I liked him, but we didn't quite see enough of him for my liking. And so then when the stuff happens at the end, which I won't talk about because spoilers, but a part of me felt it was unearned. I kept mentally comparing this as well to the Poppy War trilogy because they came out around the same time. They both are fantasy trilogies with lots of inspiration from Chinese culture, but I prefer the Poppy War trilogy. I think it has higher highs and lower lows. This is probably more consistent of a book, but at least with like when the first Poppy War book ends, it's so devastatingly traumatic and it has that staying power because what happens is so insane. This book ends in a very predictable, like, yeah, I figured you would end that way. I also won't be too surprised if this trilogy follows the same trajectory of the Poppy War, where it will basically be, so the next book will be the Dragon Republic. It will be the full on war between these two factions. We'll lose a bunch of main characters. It will be bloody. But then the third book, they'll come together and realize that their common enemy are the Westerners, the Asperians in this book, and the Hesperians in the Poppy War. Like, they will fight the white people. You know, that's the true villain, colonizers. So I'm ready for that. Hopefully it does take a more interesting direction, but I feel like that is probably the way it's gonna go. I'm already gonna hate editing this review because can already tell, like, my tone, it makes it sound like I hate the book, and I don't. I think this is a very good one. It's just, I blame the internet. The expectations versus reality. You told me it was up here. I think it's more about here. And that's, here is still very good, but I wanted more. I could have done with more interlude chapters. So there's like a handful of chapters that give you like old-timey lore about their religion and belief system and like the days of old in their culture, and that was all really interesting and it informed a lot of what they then talk about. So I could have done with more of that. Props to the book as well. So the like big event in the book that so one of the characters has like an accidental death that gets mistaken as like a murder from the rival clan, and that's the sort of thing that's the event that turns the whole conflict in motion. But at the time I'm reading it, I'm like, where's the coroner? Where's the coroner report? Someone should be dissecting the body. If someone dies in mysterious circumstances, figure out what's happening. And then lo and behold, later on in the book, there is an autopsy report. And I said, you know what? Kudos. I feel like there are tropes in this as well that I am personally like tired of. Like Andon's whole am I going to be like the greatest greenbone ever, or am I going to fall into madness because of my mother's like legacy? That was very predictable. It was like, okay, Andon, you're basically Fangrunin, who's basically Daenerys Targaryen. Like, I'm just a bit over it. Like, can we evolve this trope into something a bit more interesting? And again, I've not read books 2 and 3, so maybe it will go in a more interesting direction. But right now, I'm like, ugh, what else? I did love how much of the book takes place around the Twice Lucky, this restaurant with the squid balls that you must try. I really did want to try their squid balls, but I thought that was really cute. I'm always a sucker for like a circular narrative where like the story starts with the restaurant, ends with the restaurant. Love that. Very cute. I'm hoping in the next 2 books that Biro's character will actually have more of a point, because he has chapters here and there, but besides being instrumental in a major character's death, he's kind of pointless and like tertiary. Like, he's not related to any of the main rivalries, so it just felt odd whenever his chapters came up. What I think would have really helped this book as well is if there had been at least one POV from the other side. Like, let us see into a character who's part of the Mountain Clan, because they're supposed to be like the big baddies, but in like Game of Thrones they gave you both sides. Like, you'd see Stark perspective, you'd see Lannister perspective, and so you could appreciate it in more of a 3-dimensional way. This felt a bit too like heroes and villains, you know. I just want some more nuance. But that was Jade City. It was perfectly good. I'm just not obsessed, and I feel like that was the brief that the internet was giving me, that the Greenbone saga was going to have an indelible mark on my brain, and it's just, it's good. I'm looking forward to books 2 and 3. Yeah, sadly not obsessed.